Hi, my name is Chuck. I'm a full stack software engineer. This video is part of a series of videos where we're building a web app that is a message board. We're building a website where people can log in and leave messages for other users, and those messages are stored to a database for other users to read. So far, we have built the message board part in a simple way, where users can come here to read messages and then they can send their own message and it will be stored in a database. So if I kill the code and start it again, you can see my new message stayed. Our next step is going to be building a user system. And so in order to do that, we have sort of three independent but related features that we need to build. The first feature is users should be able to log in. Well, actually, it'll make more sense if we do it in this order. Users should be able to register. Users' actions should be associated with them. Users should be able to log in with the credentials they created. So if you kind of think about a standard login system on a website, you can register. Usually you give maybe your email or phone number and a password. We don't have to collect either, by the way. We just need some unique identifier for users and a password. Step two is we need to, now that we have a user profile system, we need to associate data that the user gives us with the profile of the user that gave it to us. So those messages, we need to store who sent a given message, not just a number. And then the third step is returning users should be able to log in. So I think for this series, I'm going to be breaking this into 3 different videos. Just for the sake of brevity. So this video will be on how to build a registration system for users. This is where we left off in our application. It is it all fits on one screen. It's kind of nice that way. We just need to add a registration. We need to add a users table and a registration page to let users sign up. So first of all, let's add the users table. We're going to go to the migrations, the initial schema. And for the sake of simplicity, we're not going to write a real migration. We're just going to keep reusing the same migration we have. So let's go ahead and create table user. We'll give users IDs. We'll set usernames that are unique. Well, they're not primary keys, so there's really no reason for them to be unique. Hi, Chuck from the future here. There's actually a great reason for them to be unique, and we will get to that when we go over login systems. And then we'll set passwords. And then, of course, for the down, drop table user. Your down section should always undo what your up section does in this migration system. Okay. In order to force the migration to happen, we'll just delete our database and start our code. Wonderful. So our messages should have disappeared. Good. That means our migration ran. Well, that means we deleted the database, but the fact that it hasn't crashed means the migration also ran. Good. So let's add a registration form. Under views, let's go ahead and make a new file called register.handlebars. form. We went over how to do forms in a previous video, but just a quick refresher because it's been several months. Action equals post. So we're going to have to make an endpoint called /register. Input type equals text. ID equals username field. Name equals username. And you know what? It's best to do labels. In the past, when I've done this tutorial, I've shown people to use placeholders. But turns out screen readers don't announce the contents of placeholders. So it's best practice to use labels. So you want to set the for attribute to the same value as the ID of the input that it's labeling. So username field, username. So what happens is you for form inputs, you want a name, which labels the data that comes into the actual form on the endpoint that it submits to. But you also want an ID, which is a unique identifier for the actual input element on the document. And then you want a label with a for attribute that points to that ID. And the cool thing about this that is nice to know is if we wire up the get route for register real quick, I want to show you something. Render register. The cool thing about this is if we go to /register, if you click on the label with the proper association, it will actually focus the field for you. Let's zoom that in. So if I click on the username label, it focuses the username input for me, which is pretty minor, but it's useful, especially for checkboxes. You know, you can click on the name of a checkbox, and if the site is coded well, the name of the checkbox will uncheck and check the box. Because they've used the label with the for attribute like they're supposed to. Did we do that on the homepage? Oh, we did. Look at that. Look at me teaching people best practices. We used camel casing last year, 11 months ago. My God. Okay, let's finish out this darn tutorial series. All right, label for equals password field. Interesting. It inserted a duplicate quote. Password. Put. Why is it doing that? ID equals password field. All right, so now there should be a username field and a password field. Oh, let's get rid of this. Oh, I kind of want this to look decent. That's okay. Here's what we're gonna do. There we go. I swear I'm having so many issues with quotation marks today. Okay, this looks fine. It's fine for now. One thing to note is that we get hot reloading on templates, but we don't get, which means whenever I save a change to the template, I can just reload the page in the browser and it'll update my code. But right now we don't get hot reloading on JavaScript files. So let's go ahead and install a tool that will reload our JavaScript files for us as we change them. It's called Nodemon. And yep, there it is right there. We install with npm I nodemon. Although, really, that was kind of wrong. npm remove nodemon. npm I -- save dev nodemon. So, if we go into package.json, you'll notice that we have our dependencies here, but then we now have a new section called dev dependencies. We should save things in dev dependencies that are only required when we're working on the project, but won't be required to run the project once it's deployed on infrastructure, which we will get to later. For now, just know that Nodemon is a dev dependency, so we needed to install with that -- save dev. And the install command in the npm page is sometimes a little, I mean, it always says the exact same thing. But their README says save dev. So that's good. Good for them. Anyway, also in package.json, we're going to change the start script from node to nodemon. So now when we run npm run start, watching extension JS MJS JSON. Perfect. Watching path. So anytime we make a change to a JS file in the whole entire folder, it'll restart the code for us. It's exactly what we wanted. So let's go ahead and add our register endpoint. Const for now, let's just console log both. And let's redirect them to the home page. I just realized I have been coding. It's been so long since I started this video series. I had a different job at when I started the series, and now I'm working somewhere else, and the code standards at my new job are different, and my editor is configured differently. So all the old text doesn't have semicolons, but the new stuff I've been writing, I've been putting semicolons on. Semicolons are optional. Strings can use 1 quote or 2 quote. It doesn't matter. So I'm just going to run my formatter and let this be fixed. And this is just going to touch every single line in the code. And that's okay. Anyway, so now we have a register page. Username, Chuck, password, ASDF, ASDF, register. The Bitwarden thing getting huge. Username, Chuck, password undefined. Why did that happen? Because we forgot to put a name on the password field. Oh, so now if we go back to the register page, username, Chuck, ASDF, ASDF. Perfect. We log both. Hey, while we're at it, let's just do that thing that websites do where they make you type your password twice just to make sure you don't fat finger it. Let's do that again. Password. I'll put them in the same line. Why not? Password repeat field. Password repeat. Password repeat. I don't know if you can have dashes in the name. Seems like we probably shouldn't, so I'm just going to not. All right. and then username, password, password, repeat. All right, I'll do a little bit of styling. There we go. I just needed a little bit of space there. Username Chuck, password ASDF 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 ASDF. Real quick before I submit, we want to log the console.log password repeat. We register. And you can see that username Chuck, password ASDF ASDF, password repeat ASDF ASDF. So now we got to do two things. We got to make sure that password and password repeat match. That's pretty easy. If password does not equal password repeat, res.render register and return. We want to exit the function early. We don't want it to continue with the registration procedure. And you know what? Let's build a mechanism that we can use to pass error messages into our templates. This will be really simple. We're just going to put it at the top of our template, our layout, which just means it'll be at the top of every page. So, it's been a while since I've written handlebars. Let's double check the documentation on that. Okay. So if div style equals background red, maroon, color white. Alrighty. So why did that delete? Oh, okay, whatever. So we'll have a maroon box with a white error message inside of it, and we'll go ahead and give it padding as well. All right, so what we're going to do now is we can pass in the second argument of res.render is any data you want to pass into the template. In this case, we're going to pass in an object with a key called error, and the error is going to be passwords must match. So now if we go to register and we make two passwords that don't match, ASDF 1234, we get an error message. Passwords must match. Perfect. It could use some aesthetic adjustment. You know, maybe we want to margin bottom 12 pixels. That's fine. We'll live with it for now. Okay, this is bugging me. We don't have any CSS wired up yet. I'm not sure if it's worth wiring up. We'll do that after we finish the registration function. Okay, so the second thing we need to do for registration is we need to store the user in a database. An important note about this is we're storing their username, but we're not storing their password. Do not ever store plain passwords. What we need to do is we need to hash their password and store a hash of the password. The idea is that the hash function is some function we can run the password through that gives us some garbled string of text on the output. And we can use that text. It has enough information to verify that the password they give us when they attempt to log in the future matches their original password, but it does not have enough information in it to actually tell what the original password is. So the library we're going to use for that is called bcrypt. That was weird. And here's how we do it. Have I been doing it in I guess I've been using my VS Code terminal. Beautiful. And then they've got instructions on how to do it with promises. We're going to be using promises. So we call hash, and then we call compare. This will be in a future episode. For now, we just need this. So bcrypt is a surprisingly hard word to spell. So salting is a procedure that you do on top of hashing that makes the hash more secure. And how many times you want to salt, in theory you want to salt forever because it results in the most secure hash, but nobody has unlimited CPU time. So the way to tell how many salt rounds to use when you're hashing stuff is to, in theory, you're supposed to test how long it takes to do the salting on your production hardware and then tune the salt rounds to where it takes an acceptable amount of time. So, you know, maybe 100 or 1,000 rounds, and then you just crank the number up or down until you can do it in under 200 milliseconds or something like that. I'm not going to do that here. I'm just going to use 10 because that's the example given in their documentation, and it's probably fine. Okay, so const password salt goes await bcrypt.hash password, and then salt rounds. Oh, got to put this below our passwords must match validation check. I typed salt. I meant hash. F2 to rename variables in VS Code. So now, if we go here and we username Chuck, password ASDF, we register. Here we go. So the password it got in was ASDF, and the hash it got out was this long string. This is what we want to store in the database. So let's do that. Delete these console logs. We don't need them anymore. Keep that. Wait, db.run. Insert into username, password. What did we call password? I explained this way you get values into a SQL string in SQLite in the previous video, but as a refresher, you leave question marks in the string, and then you pass in additional parameters, one per question mark, and it will sanitize the input for you to make sure that there's no SQL injection happening. Alrighty, now let's do the registration one last time and observe it work. Uh-oh, I think we crashed. DB is not defined. Right, the classic. There we go. We got to await the DB promise. This scary looking thing, we can actually hit continue because we want to submit that form again. Okay, so now I should have left a console login so we could tell if it worked. We're gonna open SQLite Studio and we're gonna open our data file and we're gonna see if it's there. So let's see. Projects, message board tutorial, data.db, message board tutorial, user, and then our data. Look at that. We have a user with the username of Chuck, an ID of 1, and a password that's actually a hash. We do not, once again, do not store passwords. All right, and I think that'll do it for our first video. Our next video is going to be user lookup and joins, and then our final video will be login with cookies. Wait. Cookies might end up in the second video. We'll see.